Have you ever taken a pill and suddenly realised this is what life was meant to be like? Yeah, that happened to me, and I wanted to share my story about how ADHD medication has been one of the best things to have ever happened to me. But before we get into it, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who has subscribed so far. It means a huge amount to me, so thank you. But before we get into the video, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and if you want to, consider subscribing. It helps me a ton. Thank you. My life before my ADHD medication was just a chaotic mess. I'd wake up after a poor night's sleep, vegetate for hours, doom scrolling for any hit of dopamine I could find, then on to the first of many coffees that day, battling the cyclone of thoughts going on in my head. Just to start a task and then halfway through get distracted. I was hyperactive, not bouncing off the walls hyperactive, but I would tap, I would chew, I would fidget, I would break stuff. My nickname for most of my life was Dynamite, not because I'm the bomb, but because I would make a mess wherever I would go. Conversations were a nightmare. I would just be daydreaming while someone was talking to me, giving just filler responses like, yep, when realistically I'm thinking, what happens if a SWAT team bursts through the door, throws a mask on the person I'm talking to? Then I'd have to snap back to reality and try to piece together, what were we actually talking about? And for all of my life, essentially, I didn't know that this was ADHD. I just thought it was who I was. I just thought maybe I'm a rude person, maybe I'm just a bit spicy and chaotic. And then came the masking. I didn't realize I masked so much. And anybody who masks frequently, and I'm sure they'll tell you how exhausting it is, and how for most of my life I was just in constant burnout. And spilling into my adult life, I was just like, well, this is just what adulting is, no? Being tired all the time. But it was a different type of tiredness I was experiencing, on top of the adulting tiredness. I'll quickly whiz through how I got my diagnosis, because I made a full video of it here. If you want to know how to get a diagnosis of ADHD in the UK, you can click on this video here, but please do that after you watch this video. Thank you. I was the classic tale of scrolling through Instagram, seeing a video and going, haha, that's me, not realizing that it has hashtag ADHD awareness in the corner. But it was my girlfriend who was like, you do a lot of these things. And I was like, well, I might as well go to my GP and see, and that's what got the ball rolling. I eventually got my diagnosis a year and a half later, a long time I know. But shortly after my ADHD diagnosis, I received my ADHD medication, and things didn't actually go as planned. I was prescribed Zagatin. Zagatin, as well as most ADHD medication, is a stimulant, and I was first prescribed an 18 milligram tablet. I took it on day 1, and basically felt nothing. There was a lot of me questioning, like, oh, I think I can feel it. But I didn't know what to expect, so I didn't know what had changed. A couple weeks later, I went back to my psychiatrist and said, this isn't working. And they just simply said, let's double it. So I went up to 36, and still nothing. And by this point, my expectations had started to go down. I was a bit like, oh, here we go again. It's not going to work. A couple weeks later, I went back to my psychiatrist and said, it's still not working. And they said, let's add another 18 milligrams to this dosage. So now we're at 54 milligrams. And you guessed it, still nothing. And my expectations had plummeted. And I went to my psychiatrist exhausted, like, well, I don't think this is going to happen. Can we change the medication? And they said, let's go up to the max dose and we'll see how things go. Literally the same day that I got my 72 milligrams, I was actually doing a PhD interview remotely. And in that interview, I was required to write an essay in a very short amount of time. And I remember taking this pill and maybe half hour, 40 minutes later, unbeknownst to me, I sat down and did this whole essay with no fidgeting. I researched really well, I wrote everything. And it wasn't until I had finished the interview, I was like, what had just happened? It took me so much time to process the fact that I was able to sit down at my desk and type out an essay within 40 minutes with research, without fidgeting, without moving. My full attention was on this work. I have an undergraduate degree and a master's, and this has never happened. I have never been able to sit at my desk longer than 10 minutes to write out an essay without being overwhelmed and then just saying, no, I'm not doing it, or just procrastinating to not do it. I didn't get the PhD, but Here we are. But I remember this day so vividly because it was such a pivotal moment in my life. A few other areas positively influenced by the ADHD medication include my work. I work with a lot of data and I would find myself making silly mistakes or putting off work. But when I'm on ADHD medication, I'm able to focus on my tasks, not get distracted, and I make 0 mistakes now. Yeah, that's not true. There's a mistake here or there, but it's significantly less. In my relationships, when I'm talking to friends, family, I'm far more in the moment. I don't fidget. I'm not daydreaming. I generally feel that my social relationships have just improved in general because I'm more focused on what the person is saying to me rather than daydreaming and just giving auto responses like, yeah, no way, or just finishing the conversation like, that's mad. I'm able to do chores with more ease, like laundry, cooking, cleaning. I'm more methodical. Don't get me wrong, I still hate folding laundry, but I'm just able to do it. I don't put it off. I've definitely noticed over the last couple of years I'm better with birthdays, remembering key information, names, stuff that would just get put into my brain's paper shredder before. And one of the biggest for me personally is just that my brain isn't a cyclone of thoughts and chaos. There's order and structure. I do want to set some expectations. I'm not saying that ADHD medication is a cure everything. There are side effects that I do want to go over quickly. As the medication is a stimulant, sleeping is difficult. If I take my ADHD medication too late in the day, I'm basically guaranteed not to sleep well that night. So I have to remember to take my ADHD medication before, say, 10 a.m. at the latest. Another common side effect is appetite suppression. Even before my ADHD medication, I struggled eating breakfast, but my psychiatrist said that I should eat a high protein breakfast and then take my ADHD medication just to improve its effectiveness. If you are someone who does struggle, a little tip is that Huel, the Black Edition shake, is like 35 grams of protein per serving. And it's far more easy just to make a shake and drink it than it is to make a meal, for me personally. Please don't roast me in the comments for drinking Huel. And the last one is not anybody's fault, but there's just a huge shortage of ADHD medication. So I have been without my ADHD medication for a couple of weeks just because no stock could be found. And my prescription changed quite a lot as well. I'm no longer on Zaga because it's basically impossible to get. I'm on Medikinet, that works just as effective as Zaga for me personally. But since taking this ADHD medication, one of the biggest wins is the fact that I'm making more positive changes in my life, and that's having huge implications for things like my self-esteem. I used to think that I'm lazy, I'm rude, but now I'm like, well, this is how my ADHD works, and I can work with that. I'm not just saying that ADHD is an excuse for behaviors, but I can learn from that and better myself by building support structures, healthy coping strategies, and that has shifted this self-blame to self-support, and that's incredibly difficult to do. And now, rather than directing loads of self-hatred towards myself if something happens, I make a mistake at work or I say the wrong thing, I know how to recover from it rather than just ruminating on how bad I am. And this has a knock-on effect. I feel better about myself, so I'm more willing to try new things. I've started going to the gym, eating healthier. Obviously, this isn't the ADHD medication doing this, but it's allowed me to make these changes. That's having an overall more positive impact on my health, well-being, which I am truly grateful for. So if you're someone who's just started ADHD medication, or you're just thinking about getting an ADHD diagnosis and thinking, what are even the benefits? I just want you to know that I spent years, my whole life essentially, thinking that I was this rude, lazy person. It just turns out that I needed the right support. The meds haven't fixed me, but they've definitely given me access to a version of myself that I'd never met before, or never thought that I was capable of, which I think is really cool. But again, I really appreciate you listening to this video. If you want to learn more about how to get an ADHD diagnosis, I do have a video on that. The link is somewhere in the description or on screen, or it will probably be suggested at the end of this video, so do check that out. Or if you want to hear a semi-wild story about me almost getting fired because of my ADHD, I do have a video that's somewhere on the screen right now, probably, or in the description, so do check that one out as well. And again, I'm going to be sharing more content around mental health, ADHD, and topics like medical cannabis because they're interesting to me, and I really want to share that with you guys. But as always, don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment, and if you want to, consider subscribing. A huge thank you once again for watching. I really do appreciate you. And again, I'm really grateful for all the growth that my channel has got recently. Some of my videos are doing infinitely better than I ever thought they would, and that's down to you guys. So a huge, huge, huge thank you for that. Take care and goodbye.